This happened a few months ago. I'm 32 and usually work as a graphic designer. I look forward to camping trips with friends to disconnect and enjoy nature. Oak Hollow is one of my favorite spots. It's surrounded by tall pine trees and has a quiet lake. I thought it would be a great weekend away from the city chaos. But I can't stop thinking about what happened there that we set up camp like we usually do. The evening was calm, the sky clear. I remember gathering around the fire, roasting marshmallows, and sharing stories. That first night felt normal. As I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a low, rhythmic tapping against the tent. It was soft, like someone was knocking. I thought it was just branches moving, so I blinked back sleep, trying not to dwell on it. The next night was when things got strange. After a day of hiking, I went off to find firewood. While searching, I noticed weird symbols carved into a nearby tree trunk. They looked strange and seemed to glow in the fading light. I called over to Tom, excited to show him. But when he saw them, his face changed. He looked scared and frustrated. "We should leave, Mark." "Now," he said, his voice uneasy. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. That I didn't understand why he wanted to leave so soon. I felt fine, but his tone made me hesitate. He kept looking around, like he expected something. I shrugged it off and tried to stay light-hearted. But the sounds of the forest felt off, wrong somehow. That night, I struggled to sleep. I kept hearing noises outside. Then I thought I saw a shadow by the lake. My heart raced as I sat up. I shouldn't go outside, but curiosity pulled me out of the tent. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, the ground cold under my feet. When I reached the lake, I saw a figure standing there. It was just a silhouette. I called out, but it didn't move. I felt a chill go down my spine. That I turned to find Tom, but he stood there, staring blankly. I called his name, but he didn't respond. I shook him lightly. Finally, he snapped out of it. His eyes were wide, filled with fear. I don't know what I saw, and I still don't understand what happened that weekend. "Did you see that figure by the lake?" I asked. Tom just turned away, panic on his face. "We can't talk about this," he said. My heart sank. It's haunted me ever since. What were we running from? The following day, I wanted to leave, but we stayed. Tom acted like nothing was wrong, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Every crunching leaf or snapping twig made me jump. I didn't know what to do. Later, I tried to bring it up again. "Tom, what was that?" He shook his head and stared at the ground. I could tell he was scared. Whatever happened, he didn't want to explain. I wish I could shake the feeling that something or someone is still out there, waiting. The next morning was gray and overcast. I could feel the tension in the air thickening around us like fog. Tom barely spoke as we ate breakfast. He stared at his half-eaten granola bar, his hands trembling slightly. I wanted to say something reassuring, but my own anxiety had me second-guessing every word. After breakfast, we decided to explore a different part of the campgrounds. I figured it might take our minds off the night. We hiked a bit, but Tom stayed quiet, glancing over his shoulder every few minutes. I tried to enjoy the scenery, but it felt haunted in a way I couldn't shake. Something was off, and the forest seemed to know. As we walked, I spotted another tree with those strange symbols carved into it, just like the ones from the previous evening. They were eerily similar, but this time they seemed larger and darker against the bark. A shiver ran through me. If the last ones had made Tom anxious, I knew I had to be careful how I approached this. "Hey, check this out," I called, hoping the excitement might lighten the mood. As I moved closer, Tom's face drained of color. "Mark, don't. We shouldn't be here," he said, his voice tight. The urgency in his tone surprised me. "What do you mean?" "It's just a tree. Look at the carvings. They're kinda cool," I replied, forcing a casual tone. Cool. This is not cool, he snapped, his eyes darting around like a frightened animal. Let us just go back. I didn't understand. We had come for a fun weekend and now it felt like a nightmare. As I reached out to touch the symbols, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the trees. It felt wrong, unnatural. My heart dropped as I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. A figure, just a blur, darted behind a nearby tree. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. Did you see that? I asked, adrenaline coursing through me. Tom shook his head vehemently. No. We have to go now, he said, his voice trembling. I wondered why he seemed so certain something was wrong. My instincts told me to listen. We hurried back to camp, but every rustle and snap in the underbrush felt like a threat. I was breathing heavy, heart pounding in my chest. When we reached our site, I felt a desperate need to protect ourselves. I began checking our gear as Tom paced, whispering to himself. Then, I noticed something odd on our picnic table. My backpack had been moved. I hadn't touched it since we set up camp, and the zipper was slightly open. I rushed over, the unease growing like a live wire in my chest. That's when I saw it, a small, folded piece of paper lying on top of my things. My gut twisted as I picked it up. Tom was watching me with wide eyes, his breath quickening. I unfolded the paper, the handwriting sharp and frantic. It read, "Get out before it finds you." My breath caught in my throat as Tom whispered, "We need to leave, Mark. Now." The sun was setting and shadows loomed longer than before. Something was out there, and it was close. The panic in Tom's eyes was contagious. I could hardly think straight. "Tom, wait," I said as I shoved the note into my pocket. "We can't just leave. Let us figure this out." He shot me a look filled with fear. "Figure what out?" "This place isn't right. We should never come here." I wanted to argue, to convince him that we couldn't let fear dictate our actions, but a deeper instinct told me to tread carefully. Instead, I looked around, trying to assess our surroundings. The tall trees felt like silent sentinels, and the air grew colder. Just then, a loud crack echoed through the woods. My head snapped to the sound. "Did you hear that?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Tom nodded, his jaw clenched tight. "Let us go check it out," I suggested, trying to sound braver than I felt. Tom's eyes widened as he took a step back. "You're kidding, right? We're not going back there." For a moment, I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to drag Tom along if he was genuinely terrified. But something deep inside me, a mix of curiosity and fear, urged me forward. "Tom, please, just stick close to me. We'll be okay." Reluctantly, he followed as we retraced our steps toward the noise. With each step, the trees seemed to close in tighter, as if they were eavesdropping on our every word. I led the way with a shaky flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness like a knife. We arrived at the edge of a clearing and froze. Something lay on the ground, half hidden by the underbrush. I stepped closer, my breath quickening again. It was a broken branch, but right next to it was something worse, an animal's collar, the tag rusted and illegible. "Mark, we should go back," Tom's voice trembled. I wanted to reassure him, but my stomach churned. That collar didn't look like it belonged here, it felt out of place, and its presence weighed on me. Then, a whispering wind swept through the clearing, carrying words that twisted my insides. "Get out, get out. Did you hear that?" I turned to Tom, my heart racing. His face had gone pale. "Let us go. Now." He grasped my wrist and pulled me back hurriedly. I let him lead me back to our campsite, the feeling of being watched intensifying. Back at camp, I slammed the tent door shut and zipped it up quickly. We both sat in silence for a moment, the only sound our fast breathing. I glanced at Tom, whose eyes darted around the tent. "What if it really is out there?" he whispered. "What if it's following us?" The suggestion made my skin crawl. I shot a nervous glance around the tent, half expecting to see someone or something watching us from the shadows. We should stay alert and keep an eye on our things. If we see anything else, we'll make a break for it. Tom nodded, but I could tell he was still shaken. I slid the note from my pocket and placed it in front of us. This has to mean something. We can't ignore it. Just then, a loud thud hit the side of our tent. The fabric vibrated from the force, and I jumped back. What was that? Tom looked at me with wide eyes. I'm not sticking around to find out. The tent felt like a coffin now, the darkness somehow thicker. As we scrambled for our things, I could hear something moving outside. The whispering was back, but this time it was more insistent, almost angry. Let us get out before it finds us. And before I knew it, we were on the run in the dark. The darkness swallowed us as we fled, the underbrush crackling beneath our feet. I could barely see where I was going, but fear drove me onward. Tom was right behind me, his breath heavy with panic. I glanced back only once to see his terrified expression, a mirror of my own feelings. Where are we even going? Tom hissed between gasps. I don't know. I yelled back, the sense of urgency overwhelming my thoughts. We just need to get out of here. We darted through the trees, our flashlight flickering as if it was fighting its own battle against the darkness. I tried to keep my mind focused, but that whispering wind haunted me. The more we ran, the louder it became, now sounding like desperate pleading instead of threatening words. Get out, get out. Finally, I spotted a narrow trail cutting through the dense foliage. This way. I shouted, veering onto the path. It was clearer, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. As we pressed forward, I could hear something behind us. It was subtle at first, a shuffling in the leaves, snaps of twigs. I dared not turn around. What if it was following us? The thought made my heart pound louder. I felt a jolt as Tom suddenly stopped. Mark, look. He pointed ahead, and my eyes followed, landing on what appeared to be an old, worn cabin barely visible through the trees. The structure looked abandoned, with curtains hanging limp in broken windows, and a roof partially caved in. We can hide there, I suggested, a sense of desperation. Tom shook his head vigorously, the panic returning to his eyes. Are you insane? We have no idea what or who is out here. We don't have a choice. We need to catch our breath. With a reluctant nod, Tom followed me toward the cabin, each step heavy with uncertainty. As we reached the door, I shoved it open. It creaked ominously, and a musty odor wafted out. Inside, the shadows seemed to cling to the corners. We stepped in, and I quickly closed the door behind us. I fumbled for the flashlight, the beam landing on a dusty old table, covered in layers of grime. In the dim light, I noticed something on the wall, a layout of the surrounding area, scribbled with symbols I didn't recognize. Curiosity momentarily overrode my fear. Tom, check this out, I said, pointing to the map. But Tom was pale, backing away from the shadows. Mark, we shouldn't be here. That's when I saw it. A flash of movement behind a darkened corner. It was small, scuttling away, but I felt the air change, a coldness that seeped through my bones. I followed the movement, my heart racing as I stepped closer. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from outside, sending us both jumping back. What was that? I whispered, the unease rising again. Then we both heard it, a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the walls of the cabin. It sounded close, too close. With wide eyes, I reached for the door, but before I could even touch the handle, it rattled violently, a force trying to push its way in. Run! Tom shouted as he bolted toward the back of the cabin. I followed, dread clenching my stomach. We could not stay here, and whatever was outside sounded like it wanted in. As we raced through the back door, desperation fueled our escape. I turned my head back only for a second, and that was a mistake. It stood there tall and shadowy, its eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. "Keep going," I yelled, shoving Tom forward. But deep down, a sense of horror washed over me. This was only the beginning. What had we stumbled into? I didn't have an answer, but I knew we had to keep moving. Branches clawed at my skin as we burst into the wilderness again. Tom and I ran blindly, the chaos echoing in my ears. The steady thump of our hearts drowned out the whispers of the wind. I couldn't focus, all that mattered was distance. "Go left," I shouted, spotting a small break in the trees that led to an open field. The moon hung low, barely illuminating the ground ahead. Everything felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. We slowed to a jog, still casting glances over our shoulders. There was no sign of it yet, but I could still feel that presence looming. "We need to find somewhere safe," I gasped, scanning the area. The field stretched endlessly, shadows danced among the blades of grass, and the weight of uncertainty pressed on my chest. "Look!" Tom pointed off to the right. A flicker of light shone through the trees in the distance. It was faint but steady, and hope sparked within me. Someone's out there. Maybe they can help. We moved toward the light, my legs heavy but driven by that glimmer of hope. Each step felt like a game of chance, the ground uneven beneath my feet. "Please let this be real," I muttered, and Tom nodded silently, his face drawn tight with worry. The closer we got, the more the light revealed itself. It was a fire, crackling merrily, surrounded by 3 figures. I could barely make them out, but they appeared to be huddling over something on the ground. Relief washed over me. "See? We're not alone," I whispered, unable to hide my excitement, but something about the scene felt off. The figures didn't move like people, they were unnaturally still. I felt the prickle of dread return as I approached cautiously. "Hey!" I called out, trying to make myself visible through the grove of trees. "We need help." At the sound of my voice, the figures turned, revealing their faces for an instant. I swore they weren't human. They had wide mouths that stretched unnaturally, and their eyes glowed with an unsettling brightness. I stumbled backward, gripping Tom's arm as he drew in a sharp breath. "Mark, let us go," he urged in a low tone, his voice trembling. But it was too late. One of the figures, taller than the others, stood up straight. It smiled, or at least, it looked like a smile. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, the words rolling off its tongue like a sinister melody. "What do you want?" I managed to croak out, dread pooling in my stomach. "Just to welcome you," it replied, the smile widening. "There's much to discuss. You're exactly who we've been waiting for." Before I could process the implications of those words, a loud rustling came from the trees behind us, and the air felt suddenly charged. The light from the fire dimmed, replaced by an anxious energy that warped the atmosphere. "Run!" Tom shouted, yanking me backward as the figures advanced. Their movements were quick, unnaturally so, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. We dashed away from the fire, but panic twisted my thoughts. We weren't just escaping whatever was there, we were running deeper into this nightmare. In the shadows, I spotted a series of stones arranged in a circle still faintly glowing. A chill crept through me. What had I stumbled into? I knew we had to keep moving, but the question burned in my mind: what did they want from us? The answers felt tangential, already slipping away, and I pushed Tom forward. Whatever it was, we were running out of time. As we stumbled through the thick underbrush, my heart thudded in my chest like a drum. The darkness closed in around us, but we had no choice but to keep running. Tom's grip on my arm was tight, urgent. "This way," he said, veering left as he spotted a narrow path cutting through the trees. The flickering light of the fire faded behind us, swallowed by the night. I could still see those figures in my mind, smiles that seemed more like grimaces, eyes that glittered too brightly. I tried to shake it off, focusing on our escape rather than the chaos we had just fled. Where are we even going? I panted, the rasp of my breath echoing in the silence surrounding us. My mind raced with questions. Were those figures truly human? What did they mean when they said we were who they had been waiting for? I don't know. Tom replied, his voice cracking with fear. Just find somewhere high, we need to see what's going on. We finally emerged onto a rocky incline, boulders jutting out of the ground like broken teeth. I climbed on top of one and looked around, trying to catch my breath. The woods spread deep into the night, the moonlight casting eerie shapes on the ground below. Do you see anything? Tom asked, struggling up beside me. I scanned the horizon, feeling dread rise again. Just then, I saw it between the trees, a shimmer. Was it the fire? No, something different. It was a silver glint, reflecting the moonlight. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. That thing, it's moving, I said, my voice shaky. My gut twisted with fear. Tom's eyes widened. What is it? I don't know. Let us go check it out. The words spilled out before I could think them through. I was terrified, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear. We descended from the rocks cautiously, navigating the uneven terrain. With each step closer to the shimmer, I could feel the energy shift again. An unsettling, cold breeze whipped through the trees, carrying distant, half-heard whispers that sent chills up my spine. There. Tom pointed. What is that? As we broke through the last line of trees, the source of the glimmer came into full view. It was a stream, its water sparkling under the moonlight, but it wasn't just the water that caught my attention. Surrounding it were hundreds of small rocks, painted in strange symbols. Each stone pulsated with a faint glow, red, blue, green, like they were alive. What is this place? Tom murmured, stepping closer. Some kind of altar? I guessed, an unease curling in my stomach. The marking on those stones seemed almost familiar, but I couldn't pinpoint why. Mark, look. Tom's voice trembled. He was pointing to the water. As we leaned in for a better look, the surface shimmered and shifted, revealing ghostly shapes lurking beneath. I could barely make out faces twisted in pain, mouths moving as if trying to scream, but no sound came. My breath caught in my throat. Back away. I hissed. What is this? Suddenly the air crackled, and the energy felt alive, wrapping around us like a living thing. I stumbled backward, gripping Tom's arm harder. Did you see that? He whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Before I could respond, the water erupted, launching a figure from the depths. It soared into the air, silhouetted against the moon, a distorted reflection of the figures we had encountered by the fire. Run! I shouted as it plunged back into the water, the surface rippling violently. But where could we go? There was nowhere to hide, and that thing would surely follow. Just then, I heard the echo of quick footsteps behind us again, this time not from the shadows. Someone was coming. I spun around, my heart racing as the footsteps drew nearer. The fast crunch of leaves and snapping twigs echoed in the dark. Tom, get down! I whispered urgently. We ducked behind a cluster of bushes, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I held my breath as the footsteps grew louder, then stopped not far from where we hid. My mind raced with the possibilities. Could it be one of those figures from the fire? Had they followed us? The underbrush rustled, and I caught a glimpse of a shadow moving through the trees, illuminated briefly by the moonlight. It was tall, too tall to be anything human. My fingers tightened around a branch by my side as I tried to steady my breathing. Stay quiet, I murmured to Tom, who nodded shakily beside me. Whatever was out there seemed to be searching, its movements deliberate as it scanned the area. It didn't belong to the night. I could feel it, something ancient, something wrong. Then, as if answering my unspoken fear, the glowing stones at the stream began to flicker wildly. Their light became erratic, pulsating like a heartbeat, and a low humming sound emanated from them. "Mark," Tom whispered, trembling. "What's happening?" "I don't know, but we need to move." I dared a glance toward the stream, and my stomach dropped. The figure emerged again, towering over the water with a grotesque, elongated face. Its features were indistinct, but its eyes bored into me with an intense, unnatural intelligence. Suddenly, it raised an arm, pointing directly at our hiding spot. "Go!" I shouted, grabbing Tom and pulling him back through the brush. We sprinted away from the stream, back towards the rocky incline where we had first climbed. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the sounds of the forest around us. We reached the incline and paused to catch our breath. I could see the shapes of the trees shifting in the moonlight, twisting into ominous forms. The echo of the figure's footsteps still rang in my mind, haunting me. "What do we do now?" Tom asked, his voice shaky. "We can't go back. We need to find a place to hide until morning," I said, scanning the dark forest around us. "Maybe we can find a cave or something." As we picked a direction, a chilling howl shattered the silence, reverberating through the woods. It sounded close, too close. My heart sank. "Did you hear that?" Tom froze, his eyes wide. "Yes," I said, creeping along beside him, every nerve ending on high alert. Just ahead, I noticed a thicket that looked like it might provide some cover. "Over there." I pointed, and we darted toward it, trying to remain silent. Once inside the thicket, I tucked myself into a tight ball between the low branches. I could feel Tom pressing against me, trembling. The howl echoed again, this time followed by a series of guttural growls. Then, with a sudden rush, the figure from the stream burst into the thicket. It was monstrous, its jagged shadow illuminated by the glow of the stream behind it. But it wasn't he alone. Emerging from the shadows, a pack of otherworldly creatures followed, their eyes shimmering like the stones. My breath hitched as I realized they weren't just creatures, they were the figures we had seen before, but now they were twisted and wild. "Mark," Tom whispered, panic in his voice. "What do we do?" Just then, the air around us grew thick, and an unseen force crashed against the thicket, sending debris flying. I knew then that running wasn't an option. We had to stand our ground, then everything went dark. I jolted awake, confusion spinning in my head like a tornado. The darkness around me was thick, suffocating. I felt the weight of Tom's presence beside me, but the air was charged with an unsettling energy. I blinked, trying to adjust to the shadows, but nothing revealed itself. "Tom?" I whispered, my voice barely escaping my throat. No response. Panic began to seep in. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath me, and I pressed my hands against the earth to steady myself. I could hear low growls nearby, echoing like the last whispers of a nightmare. I strained my ears, trying to grasp reality, but the sound was getting closer. Just then, I caught a glimpse of a faint glow to my left. I squinted against the darkness. It flickered briefly, illuminating a small opening in the thicket, a clear path. My instinct screamed at me to move, but I couldn't leave without Tom. "Tom!" I called out again, louder this time. A heartbeat passed, then another, and finally, I felt his hand grip my arm. "I'm here," he breathed, his voice shaky. "What just happened?" "I don't know. We have to get out of here." My heart pounded as I led him toward the glimmering light. We crawled through the branches, inching forward cautiously. As we emerged into a small clearing, I blinked at the sight before us. The stones by the stream pulsed with an eerie radiance, as if calling us. But it wasn't just that the figures were there too, lurking at the edges of the light. They stood motionless, their gaze fixed on us, hungry yet curious. A shiver chased down my spine. I felt like prey trapped in the gaze of predators. The tall one, the same I had seen before, stepped forward, its elongated face twisting into an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Don't move," I said softly to Tom, who was stiff beside me. "Shouldn't we run?" he whispered urgently. I shook my head. It was too late for that. The glow from the stones intensified, and I noticed something else. A rough figure was emerging from the chaos. This one looked different. It appeared darker, almost shadow-like, and there was something familiar about it. "Wait," I began, when suddenly the shadow lunged forward and collided with the tall figure. There was a moment of chaos as loud, primal snarls filled the air. "What the hell is happening?" Tom gasped, fear mounting in his voice. I didn't know how to explain it. The figures fought around us, a blurred dance of shadows and light. I felt the ground tremble again, and then the air shifted, carrying the scent of smoke and something sweet. That's when I saw it. A small bag, half buried in the dirt at the edge of the clearing, gleaming beneath the low light. As the creatures collided and howled, an overwhelming urge took hold of me. I had to get that bag. "Tom, stay here," I commanded, darting toward it. Time slowed as I stumbled forward, the chaos swirling around me. The figures were now completely consumed by their battle, oblivious to my movement. With shaking hands, I reached down, grabbing the bag. Before I could think, I flung it open. A rush of strange symbols and ancient talismans spilled out, the energy radiating through me with an electric pull. "Mark, get back!" Tom shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. I looked up, heart racing. The chaos suddenly fell silent. All eyes turned toward me. My breath caught in my throat as I realized the figures were no longer focused on each other, but on me. That's when I understood. Whatever they were fighting for, I had just picked a side. The silence was suffocating. All the figures, those shadowy beings I had feared only moments ago, were now locked onto me with an intensity that sent chills racing down my spine. The air crackled, charged with anticipation. "What did you do?" Tom's voice trembled beside me. I felt his panic matching my own. I don't know." I stammered, the bag still clutched tightly in my hands. The symbols on the talismans flickered, and each one seemed to hum in response to the tension around us. The tall figure, the leader of them all, took a cautious step closer. I could see its elongated fingers flex, reaching toward the glowing talismans. It didn't feel like a threat, not yet. It felt curious. I took a shaky breath and spread the symbols out on the ground between us, half expecting some kind of reaction. "Maybe I can help?" I suggested, my voice cracking slightly. The moment I spoke, the figures leaned in, as if drawn to my words. The tall one tilted its head, its misty eyes narrowing. It opened its mouth and a sound came out that I couldn't comprehend, a mix of growls, hums, and something else, something almost melodic. "Mark, we should go," Tom urged again, his voice breaking through the strange noise. "Wait," I said, holding up a hand. I needed to understand what was happening. Suddenly, the dark figure that had fought the tall one slipped back into view. It growled low, clearly agitated, its shadowy form flickering like a flame caught in a breeze. The other creatures backed away slightly, and I felt a new wave of fear swell inside me. Did I make things worse? I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Then, without warning, the dark figure lunged forward again, its eyes locked onto the bag. I tensed, bracing myself as if it might attack, but instead it skidded to a halt just shy of the symbols. It hesitated. That moment was all it took. The tall one rushed in, confronting the dark figure. Their low growls began to rise again, echoing around the clearing. I could hardly breathe. "What are they fighting over?" I asked, torn between wanting to understand and wanting to flee. "Can't you see?" Tom replied, his voice barely above a whisper. It's the bag. Whatever's in there, it means something to them. The thought sent a jolt of clarity through my fear. What if the symbols held a key to this conflict? What if I could end the fight? Maybe I started, but the dark figure turned to me suddenly, its gaze sharp. Everything inside me screamed to run, but I found myself immobilized. The chaos faded away, the only sound now was the rustling of leaves and the distant gurgle of the stream. I clutched the bag tighter, feeling the life of it pulsing in my hands. Then, without any warning, the ground beneath me gave a deep rumble. The tension escalated again with the rising growls echoing among the trees. "Mark, we need to leave," Tom shouted, pulling on my arm, trying to pull me back, but I couldn't move. I didn't want to, not now. In that instant, I realized we were no longer observers in this drama. We were part of a much larger story, one that could change everything. As darkness closed in, I glanced at the bag and the symbols, and then back at the creatures. Whatever was about to happen, I knew it wouldn't end well if I stayed. And yet, curiously, I felt drawn to the unfolding chaos. Before I could decide, a blinding light erupted from the bag, casting everyone in its glow. I stood frozen as the world around me began to shift. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I lay on a cold, damp surface. I pushed myself up and looked around, disoriented. I was in a clearing, the towering pines circling me like ancient sentinels. Morning light filtered through the branches, but the peaceful ambience contrasted sharply with how I felt. The echoes of the night before still lingered in my mind, chilling me to the bone. "Tom?" I called out, my voice stronger than I expected. No reply. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, scanning the area for any sign of him. My heart raced as every crack of a branch sent an electric shock of fear through my veins. There was only silence, thick and oppressive. I looked around, recalling the chaos, the figures, the strange symbols all hovering at the edge of my memory like shadows refusing to dissipate. Where was Tom? Had we escaped? The absence of the figures from the night before seemed both like a blessing and a curse. I took a deep breath, willing my mind to focus. I had to find Tom. Moving cautiously, I stumbled away from the clearing and into the trees. Each step felt like peeling back layers of the night's memory, the figures fighting, the bag, the ominous energy pulsating around us. I made my way deeper into the forest, pushing past bushes and brambles. The woods seemed almost alive, whispering secrets I was not meant to know. "Tom!" I shouted again, desperation creeping into my voice. Still no answer. My thoughts spiraled. How had we been separated? Had he made it out? I tried to recall the last moment we were together, the thick fog of dread settling over me as the darkness enveloped us. I pressed on, my heart hammering against my ribcage. After what felt like an eternity, I came to a narrow path. A glimmer of sunlight at the path's end beckoned me forward. I jogged toward it, hope rising within me. As I reached the opening, I burst onto the familiar sense of space, the campsite we had set up days earlier. I blinked, confused. Shouldn't it be packed up? Empty? But it looked untouched, a strange normality amidst the chaos. There, in the center of the site, stood my backpack, untouched but oddly out of place. I approached warily. As I reached it, I noticed the folded note I had tucked away before fleeing the cabin. The same handwriting scrawled across its surface, "Get out before it finds you." The dread knotted heavier in my stomach. As I unfolded it, I noticed it felt different, charged, almost vibrating beneath my fingertips. The symbols from last night were faintly visible along the edges, glowing softly in the day's light. I found myself scanning the area, checking over my shoulder, the note crumpling in my hand as I wrestled with reality. "Mark!" A frantic voice broke through my thoughts before I could fully process the scene. I turned to see Tom emerging from the tree line, wild-eyed and disheveled. Relief washed over me, but it was drowned quickly by a new wave of uncertainty. He staggered toward me, his clothes torn, dirt smudged on his face from the night's events. "Are you okay?" he gasped, collapsing against a tree for support, his breaths rapid and shallow. "More or less," I replied, unsteady but grateful to see him. "What happened? Do you not remember?" I thought Tom paused, his expression shifting from confusion to sheer terror. "It was at the cabin, wasn't it? Those things, they came for us. The dark one. I thought it was going to tear me apart." His words sent a fresh bolt of fear through me. I remember pieces. The bag, the symbols, something powerful went off," I muttered, not fully comprehending as the knowledge glimmered in the back of my mind. "But we made it out. We have to keep moving." "Agreed," Tom echoed, glancing at the trees behind him. "But what did we actually escape from? Did we leave it behind?" I shook my head, uncertainty curling around my thoughts. "I don't know. That bag, something is still tied to it. What if it's not finished with us?" We both scanned the campsite, the uneasy feeling creeping back, settling heavily as if the forest itself was breathing behind us. The haunting whispers of the woods seemed louder now, echoing the depths of our restless night, blurring the line between what was real and imagined. Without another word, we packed our gear quickly, the urgency palpable. We moved silently back toward the path through the woods, but the air felt charged, thick with inexplicable tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the trees were stretching their gnarled branches to eavesdrop on our every thought. As we stepped off the path into the foliage, I paused for a moment, glancing back over my shoulder at the campsite. In that flash of memory, it felt all too familiar. Had we ever really escaped? Or had something else merely shifted away, waiting for the right moment to return? I turned, swallowing hard against the unease that fluttered in my chest. We walked in silence, but the lingering tension wrapped tightly around me. The forest whispered as we made our way deeper, uncertainty and fear clouding our thoughts. I wasn't sure what awaited us, but I felt a piece of myself still lingering back at the campsite, stuck in a loop of dark memories and unanswered questions. I moved forward, and with each step, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning.